I wanted you to meet Tom.
Hi,
He's
Tom.
a friend of mine, partner, and previous client as well. We work together doing some of the similar stuff I'm doing with you right now.
Nice.
Yeah, man. It's good to meet you.
As well. It's man, I don't know how you deal with Russ. Honestly, he's a lot. You know, he's able to. I don't know. He's got a different perspective on life as a whole.
Really does.
And so he's able to, I don't know how he does it, but like taking story and making it something that actually reads.
It's unbelievable.
It's something I can do. So we appreciate Russ. I don't know how you deal with him overall, but in his skill sets are quite impressive.
Yeah.
So I think you've probably seen that as well. I think,
Oh, yeah.
I hope you have at least. So
Yeah, I was trained in like marketing and messaging and selling. And I mean, the podcast that we just did, like he laid down some stuff in there that's going to blow people's minds. It's some of the SOCOM stuff that is like, you know, you don't learn this as a civilian. You don't learn that these things are even being done. You hear about stuff, but nothing like what he knows. And then the translation of that to business actually has high, because you're talking about the same thing, which is how to get people to make a positive decision and obtain a better outcome.
for sure.
Never heard of anybody how do it the way he does. So yeah, it's really good. So how do you guys, tell me how you guys are, so how do you work together?
We met in the executive MBA program here at the University of Utah. So we're in the same cohort. Got to be buddies on different teams, and we're all friends in that cohort. It's a real friendly group.
It's a pretty tight group, which is awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Russ and he was bullshitting about some marketing thing and how he helps authors, you know, develop programs. And at the same time, I'm sitting here shaking my head and hitting my head against the floor in most cases on how long. I mean, I've been working at this for 7 years, trying to figure out how to turn professional expertise of any sort into money, and be able to sustain my own business and be able to do it in a way that's scalable and be able to do it in a way where my wife doesn't hate me and be able to sustain.
Sounds like me and you
family. So I heard him like talk about, I was like, shit, I just need his help. And so I went up to him on one of our breaks and I was like, help. And he's like, okay. And we started it the next day. So
awesome. I mean,
and it's turned into some clarity, to say the least. So
yeah. That's the best way. I got to know Russ when he did a psychological profile on me.
Nice.
like a intelligence community,
legit profiling.
No, straight up
creating a target package,
dossier targeting package on me. And I was like, I read this and I'm like, oh my dear God. So that's how I got to meet him. I didn't know him prior. I knew his client. Chase. And so he took Chase from not really anybody knew about Chase to now Chase is in business with like Dr. Phil. and Rusty was the behind the curtain. He was the man behind the curtain on all this. And he was building out Chase's campaigns. He was building out Chase's Kajabi. He was building out the message. Like literally, I watched him and did what he did. And then when Chase was like, hey, we want to do a profile on you, Tom, maybe we can sell this profile, like for a business, approach. We can sell this for executives and things like that. I'm like, well, who's going to do this? Chase, like, I can't do it because I already know you. So I'm going to have my team of operatives do it. Well, next thing you know, here it is. It's like I get this dossier and I'm like, oh my God, they got me targeted. Like they know exactly my innermost fears. And Rusty, when I first meet, he's like, hey, Tom, it's good to, even though I feel like I really know you. It's so creepy, great. It was wild. So yeah, so basically that's got spooky. So got to know each other that way.
It's awesome.
And then I mentioned during this podcast that we actually did some project together. We built this course, I went through the Sam Ovens stuff, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff about digital marketing, and went down the path of that. And I built this course to teach people how to get into cybersecurity from a business angle, because every college, they have like a cybersecurity program, but problem is that, I mean, I'm a perfect example of it. I didn't go to college for cybersecurity. They didn't have that. I was, I'm too old for that. I was like, when I started in the field, I was 2000, and they only had like engineering degrees and stuff like that. I actually got in through sales and selling cybersecurity software to businesses. Well, it's a very lucrative opportunity and field, but nobody teaches it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to build a course around this. Rusty partnered with me on building out all the kind of go-to-market and the active campaign and the messaging and so on and so forth. And what I mentioned on that podcast that we just did is, as a result of that, now there are people that are director level in product companies in this field as a result of his work. And so that's, that's like the power of how you can use this approach or methodology to impact people. It's definitely unconventional. I mean, super cool.
Yeah. No, I'm been very, very impressed with where we've gotten to so far. It's lit a fire under my ass on a lot of things that I've wanted to do for a long time, and giving me a little bit more confidence in making it happen. Right. Mm-hmm. I know heart and soul that this stuff of what I do in performance psychology, is valuable. It's just, getting it into the hands of the people that need it. I've always thought it's all about access. No one knows about what I do. And whenever I talk about it, everybody's like, oh my God, like, yes. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I fucking needed it when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Right. Like, anyway, so it's about, I don't know how much you know about me and what I do.
No, tell me. Yeah. Cause now you got it's performance psychology. You got I love advanced human performance. Yeah. And I have buddies that are in it in different disciplines. So yes.
So we learn about it a lot when we get into professionalism, right? We get into kind of the performance psychology, how to think and to help you perform, what have you. But when I was 14, I was a hell of a golfer. I was going pro.
Wow.
I'd been golfing since I was 4 years old. My grandma gave me a pair of clubs, and I wore through those initial pair of clubs in a year. Like, just the grips and the grooves of those clubs were gone.
Yeah.
And then I hit puberty, and everything physically was great, but I was an asshole to myself. I was critical. I was comparing myself, had high expectations. Anxiety was through the roof. And when it came to actually playing the game and competing, I would flop. Anyway, by the time I was 14, I got into a state tournament with my high school team and ended up walking off because I was such a dick to myself. It was so hard for me to play the game anymore, and a game that I loved. I truly loved it. It wasn't until 6 years later that I realized and found out that there was a field called sport and performance psychology that taught and trained athletes on how to think. And what to do mentally in order to help you perform physically, right? So I went headlong. I changed my program from mechanical engineering to sports psychology. Got my master's in 4 years after that. So I was in school for 6. And then after that, it was all about, okay, like, how do I help my 14-year-old self? So dove headlong into, contracting with programs across the state to supply and performance psychology and make sure that these kids kind of knew how to talk to themselves more effectively, how to utilize their imagery, how to focus and attend to the most important pieces, how to control their activation and their anxiety levels, and just the things that we kind of figure out along the way as adults, right? But doing it as children, because we kind of get stuck in our ways as adults. I started working with adults, and actually was starting to work with triathletes specifically. And I didn't understand what they were going through. I was a golfer and a lacrosse player at that point. And yeah, I was like, you guys are stupid. Like, why would you sit on a bike for 6 hours on a weekend in a basement? Like, that's dumb, just to train, right? And so I started working with professionals, and I was like, I can't work with them if I don't know what they're doing. So 16 months later, did my first Ironman, and truly learned what endurance mindset was like, and kind of that whole side of things. And started working with adults, and I hated it. And I was like, man, they can't change very well. They're not very neuroplastic, right? They don't have flexibility. So I was like, I just got to go back to my purpose and my passion, and that was kids. And so that all kind of leads down to kind of what Russ and I have been talking about. I have been going after the athlete for a long time, when who I should be going after is the parent, making sure that they're supported with how to have good conversations with their kids, on how to help them through tough times, on how to support them from the parent side of a high performance athlete.
Did you help with that pivot?
So that was the whole shift of now we're creating, you know, support and selling the parent, and making sure that the parent is supported alongside the athlete training, which in the past it's been so disconnected. It's like, you're going to feel on an island as I work with your athlete. You're not going to know what's going on.
I love it.
And so then the athlete fizzles out, and the parent's not there to support and back them up. And so we're tying together kind of an 8-week program that essentially enables training for the athlete and the parent alongside the athlete, so they can hear the conversations as well as facilitate the relationship a little bit, on helping the athlete understand how the parent can support them, and helping the parent understand how the athlete needs to be supported. Because every athlete needs something a little bit different, as you probably well know. So it's a relationship and a bonding piece there, as well as you know, ultimately serving this purpose of providing access to performance psychology to every youth athlete in the nation. And that's really the goal, is making sure that they have something that they can turn to if they find themselves where I was. Because my mom, she didn't know what to do for me. She had no idea, and she didn't know I was going through it.
So it can be traumatic. I mean, you're pursuing your passion, number one. You have a wife that supports you enough that she hasn't killed you yet. And I can say the same, and Russ the same. I mean,
growth mindset on that one.
Dude, the levels of risk that I've taken to do this business is unnatural, and the fact that my wife has like not killed me or divorced me is amazing, and she still loves me. I've spent over $1 million of my own money to build this company. Wow. And it was and so that's, I mean, we're talking like a wild investment, and it's not like I came from money. Actually, I was poor growing up. So, you know, that's the thing. So it's just, you know, knowing how far you'll go. I actually, believe it or not, like, a part of the reason that I think that you know, we'll all be successful in this is a similar story. I was a wrestler growing up. Everybody thought that I was going to be a state champion. I wrestled.
Russ, everybody has a story. Everybody. It resonates with everyone.
It's huge. I mean, my wife was a college field hockey player. She turned out to be good, really good. She got a bunch of scholarships, and I ended up wrestling in Central Pennsylvania, which is Penn State University there, and they're the #1 in the nation. And the guys that went there, I couldn't beat them, and had asthma. I actually talked to the Penn State sports psychologist in like 9th grade and all this kind of. So I'm a big believer that if I would have had that more in my life at a young age, it would have made a difference. I learned about visualization and all that kind of stuff at a young age. And it's just such a powerful thing. And then faster in life, like later, I started finding myself around a lot of really successful athletes. One of the guys, like, I'm friends with Travis Best. He played with Jordan. I'm friends with Bobby Williams, who is like Bobby's Mariel Hemingway's husband. I'm friends with both of them. Bobby he's 60 and he looks like he's 30. He was on the cover of Men's Health like 10 times. He was Mr. Soloflex. If you remember Soloflex, he was literally that guy on the Soloflex ads. And then DJ Dozier, I've worked with him a lot. DJ was a Penn State football player and then became a pro football and baseball player. And so the psychology of it, I've always been fascinated with when you see human performance optimization, basically. And then that's probably my fascination with the spec ops community and the intelligence community in some respects is because of that, is the ability to like, kind of transform your brain to make the supernatural come possible.
Yeah.
So the fact you're doing that with kids, I think you're smart to go after the parents, because the parents hold the checks. They make the sacrifices too to drive their kids to all the travel team stuff. Like down where I live, I live in Northern Virginia outside of DC. And I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and we're both from Pennsylvania. And we're like, hey, like she was telling me that, Tessa, my 15-year-old, that she's not going to be in any kind of sports going forward in the school, and Lulu maybe. And I'm like, why? And she's like, Tom, they start in like 4th grade or 3rd grade or even younger, and then they go to travel teams, and by the time they get to varsity, they've already traveled and done like national level execution of this sport. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And she's like, no. So the level of commitment that goes into kids sports these days, I think you've got a huge opportunity in front of you, for sure.
That's what I've always recognized, right? I mean, it's a $20 billion industry.
It's huge
in the US alone, right? I mean, it's just, and it's ridiculous. I actually just got a call, and Russ, I'll have to talk to you about this, but a call from a group in Bangkok. It's actually a military group that supports a bunch of athletes over there, but essentially they want us to come out and support their parents in their program. And it's just like, cool. Like, so and I've worked with athletes from Ireland to Europe to, in the whole European industry to Australia, right? Like the virtual aspect of this is scalable. I know that, right? But it's getting enough, for the time that you are trading, because it is a time for money kind of situation. And yes, there are some components of what I'm building that are product based, and that I want to build into something that is sustainably product oriented, right? But that's down the road. But yeah, it's I'm excited. I know everybody I talk to is like, that's so important. And then it's just about figuring out how to create an environment, a product, a service in a way that makes them feel, number one, that they have access and availability to, but also that they give value in a space that provides that access. But then it's the next step of, okay, if you want to work with somebody, if you want to actually get something changed in your athletes and or your relationship with them, and how they play sport, then pay you got to pay for it. And I love the offers that we've generated so far. So
what's your website, Nate? What is your website?
mentalgritconsulting.com.
Nice.
But I also wanted to see because Tom's done some big scale stuff, and I wanted you to see how relevant what you're doing, like the scalability of it is there. And I think not to be in a rush or hurry, or think that, you're alone in this, that it works, the process works. Like, for example, Nate, tell Tom so far the process and the ahas that you've gone through. And Tom, see if this relates with what we did with you and kind of what you went through.
Well, I mean, it's very, very similar to what we've already kind of suggested is the aha of the parent, right? Being the bread, the person I need to be targeting in my marketing, number one. The clarity that came from the conversation of tell your story, and then I will put that into a storyline that enables people to relate, which I've always been really good at in phone calls, right? Or I mean, even just us right now, right? Like it's an easy connection, and I think everybody can feel that. So there's that piece of it. By the way, the website is not updated for the new offer, and there's going to be a lot of new stuff.
It's good for me to learn.
So those were like kind of the two big ahas. And the third one, at least in the last couple of days, I've realized the amount of help I need, and the amount of perspective I don't have in the skill sets that I don't have. Since I started a business, I have always bootstrapped and done everything myself, from the video creation to the website development. Like I learned how to do that, and then I generated a business off doing that, right? then, marketing and creating material. And I've always kind of loved the creation of assets. I own a branding company and a branding firm, I guess you could say, that is just purely based around, like, if you're gonna connect with people, then you need to look good, right? Like it needs to be able, like the athletes I work with, when I first started working with them, they would give me from the university like a worksheet for me to give them. And it was black and white, and it was in Times New Roman. And I was just like, this is stupid. No athlete is going to want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the first things I did was turn those worksheets into something that was fun and like vibrant and had some brand to it, right? And looked good. And there was instant engagement because of it. And from a youth athlete standpoint, right? So like all of that stuff was really exciting to me. But even though I've done all of this, in my mind, superpower of being able to turn whatever's in my head into reality, which is something I've always loved to think of myself as. I just can't necessarily, or don't really care to do that anymore. I do need someone to be a clarifier for my storyline, right? And to see it from a different perspective.
Dude, critical. Like, you can't do this alone. One of the hardest things to get, like, I think we're probably all like this, but I mean, we'll do as much as we humanly can, all like people like us, but is coming to the realization that this is not a single sport. This is a team. And even if
I need that, I need the team. I need the energy from the team.
Yeah,
right?
it's critical.
Getting into the NBA was like one of those big things, like those aha moments was, hey, you've been doing this solo for 7 years. It's gotten you nowhere because of the fact that you keep starting and stopping, because there's no energy behind everything that you build, right? Even though it's being built. And I've always like took pride of the fact that I have 7 years worth of material that I can do something with now, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like what I'd say, Nate, the reason I bring it up is that I got invited to this mastermind from somebody in my own industry, but they're all entrepreneurs. They're starting their own businesses.
Yeah.
And, there's varying levels. Like, in other words, some people have raised capital. I'm in the world of like raising venture capital and things like that.
Yeah.
Then there's people that are like, they have a regular day job and then they're just trying to like get their other business going, that kind of stuff. But there's a variance of them. There's about eight guys, girls in here. And I participated in that for about maybe a year, but it got me through some rough times when I felt like I was alone in doing what I'm doing. And my point is that entrepreneurship can be wildly isolating, irrespective of how good we are at our trade craft or our let's say our subject matter expertise. That's a separate thing. Then take that and compartmentalize it. You could be the best in the world at being a sports psychologist for children, but it has really nothing to do with the art of building a startup and scaling it and learning from all the people around you.
And that was one of my biggest mistakes, is thinking that, well, I mean, I know how to think. It was the same thing with the Ironman, right? I was just like, well, if I can like have 100% mental game, I can do the Ironman. And then it was like a total realization halfway through the Ironman, right? It was just like, no, 90% of any sport is physical. Like, no shit. You can't say that it's 90% mental, because it's not, right? But if you have that other 10% of that it is mental, right? Like, it optimizes and brings your full physical potential to light, right? And it's just that whole idea. But yes, you're so right in that whole idea. I talked to a parent this last week. I told her about our new program, and she says, I'll tell everybody I know about this, because I've been working with her son for the last 7 years. And she says it's been the most validating experience to know that somebody is there behind me as the parent to back them up, right? That I trust and I appreciate. And I was like, okay, cool. She's like, not all of them are going to have the money. And I'm going to say, I said, okay, that's fine. She's like, but I need them to know you. I need them to know about you. How do I do that? And I was like, well, what if there is a part of the community that is accessible to all parents that they can share across the world, right? Because all parents can. And I was like, okay, so if I do that, then I'm going to need to do like a premium kind of paywall. And I'm starting to build out this thinking. But I was like, man, this is again one of those things. Do I do it alone?
Yep.
And it just comes down to, okay, I have all these great ideas, and grass is greener on the other side of these ideas, right? I am grass is green in it hardcore right now. But then I'm kind of backed up with my wife, and she's like, why don't you evergreen it? Why don't you bootstrap it? As you sell, then build. And I was like, well, okay, but I'm excited. And this is really exciting, honey. Like, you don't know what's in my mind right now. It got us to $150,000 this next year, right? And it's like, right. And you get that, right? And I'm trying to hold myself back, but push enough that I'm taking enough risk to make these things happen, but also validate them as I go, right?
Smart, yeah.
God damn it. I'm too excited. And this is me just being aware of myself. But I also am fighting back and forth between, do you just pull the trigger and trust yourself? Or do you hold fast to the process and slow it down, right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast kind of idea, right?
You ever watched Undercover Billionaire?
What's that?
You should watch that show. I highly recommend it. It's basically, there's a guy named Glenn Stearns. They pick him up on his yacht. I think it's on the History Channel, maybe, or I think it's on the History Channel. I'm not sure. Russ, you might have seen it too, right? I might have told you to watch it.
It's good.
Yeah. So basically, they take these billionaires and they say, hey, you can't make any money in this country anymore. The American dream's dead. And they're like, whatever, man, that's not true. I'll show you. And they pick them up. It's a reality television show. They pick them up, put them around the country, and they say, here's $50, an old beat up pickup truck. You can't use your cell phone connections. Good luck. And you have 90 days to build a company worth $1 million. And you have to do it through sheer ingenuity and grit and everything else. It's a fascinating show, and I highly recommend to watch it. DJ Dozier is who told me to watch it, and I did watch it. It was real smart. And so my point behind it is it teaches you a lot about the real bootstrap. If you know Grant Cardone, he did it as well. And his result was phenomenal. But point being is that I think that one of the things that I always consider is don't do what I did. I did something that is ridiculous and unnatural. I went out and raised money, which you should do. If you're in a software business, you should use OPM. But I raised money, and then I spent my own money. I spent all my own money. And even tapped into my house and did all this crazy stuff. And it waited 7 years to have a product to sell and had to sell consulting or just scrap by or live off of investment in the middle. Don't do that. The other thing I tell you is okay, so I live in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is the wealthiest county in the country.
And it's got good lacrosse players over there too. So
it's ridiculous. And so here's the thing. The reason I bring this up, the parents spend so much money on their children's sports. It is unbelievable. If you could figure out a way to demographically tap, you could make such a living alone just on a subset of the market of Loudoun County, Virginia. In and of itself. Could you imagine that?
That's what I think is if I could just capture it though, right? Yeah. And if I could just do it once,
yes,
I could believe in it, right? Yeah. And this is coming from, and I've got to take just quick backstory. The reason I'm doing the MBA is because my wife doesn't believe that what I'm doing in sports psychology will ever make a foundation of financial stability, ever. Because I've proved her right for the last 7 years. That's why I'm doing the MBA, right?
Got it.
Because she thinks that at least that will give me the foundation to go corporate and to maybe be a performance specialist or a leadership development specialist, because I've been in corporate leadership with a book that I wrote. But it's okay, but that's not the dream. God damn it. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason though, is there's a part of this where it's just believing that what I'm doing, that there's a market for it. And I'm so naive, Tom. I am so naive to what can be, which is why I'm bringing Russ in, right? Like, so that's just a piece of all of this that you've got to understand.
Well, I get it, brother.
anyway.
I mean, listen, you're a SME. You're a SME, okay? You're a SME, and the reality is, and I get accused of this too, by the way, by my buddies who are like, I'll give you an example. I have a buddy that I brought into my company recently. I've known him for 15 years. He's built and sold 2 companies. He sold his first company at 28 years old. He was a stockbroker in Hollywood or Beverly Hills. He sold the company for millions of dollars. He was one of those guys rolling around in Gucci suits at 28 with smoking cigars and thinking he was like the big shit, right? Then fast forward, he builds another business, grows it to like 300 million in revenue, sells that business. Then he sells all his stuff, drives around in the country in a camper. His daughter's like 30, lives in California. I get a hold of him. We're talking. He's like, hey, what are you doing? Next thing you know, he's like, hey, man, well, do you have a product yet? I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, what do you think? I'm like, all right, dude, if you think you got what it takes, snap in. So he comes in and we'll talk. And he's like, Tom, I know you're trained in enterprise sales. And I know that you are a subject matter expert in cyber and artificial intelligence and things. That doesn't mean you're a sales guy. And this is coming from a guy that is a transactional stock market type of like boiler room salesman, right? Minded. Okay. But he makes a heck of a point. He's always like, Tom, get down to $1. Show me how to make $1. I want to be able to transact $1. And then once I can transact $1, I can scale that dollar. So he pushed me to get our software. So Russ, if you think about why now we have this SaaS, he pushed me to quit being in esoteric land a bit and move to action where I now can transact $1, $50, $100, boom, 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 boom. I think the thing is, it does take people around us, Nate, that have different experiences than us. And it's one of those things where it's Cisco. I used to run national security for Cisco Systems. And the funny thing is, corporate doesn't translate to entrepreneurship, as you know.
Yeah.
And one thing though, that running these sales teams I had, there was a saying that was never lose alone. That's meaning you have support and team around you. One of the virtues of working for like a Cisco is you've got, you can quarterback, hey, I need marketing over here. I need somebody to do this, boom, boom, boom. Well, as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to lose alone, and we have a tendency to be isolated and the tendency to not really like reach. And then when we see something that might have an opportunity, we're like, well, do we allocate the investment or do we not? And then we got to fight our wives, and our wives are like, you're nuts. I mean, I understand it completely, but just know that, I'm glad you connected us up, Russ. I've got a lot of experience. My network, I work with guys that have built companies and sold them for 75 million at 27 years old, things like that in the software space. One company sold to Symantec. I work with serial entrepreneurs, and thank God, because if I didn't, I would literally think I'm insane, or I would listen to my wife's times where, and the funny thing is we expect our wives to understand and like empathize. And I get all of that. Like I'm that too, but in reality, like I do get to points where I'm just in my head, I'm like, she's never going to understand it. It's not her job, nor does she want to understand. The truth is she just wants it to be successful.
She wants stability. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten down to that. Right. Yeah, and it really is. And it's just like, and that's my job. And I get that. Right. so doing it in a way that is helpful for that scenario, but
you're not alone.
This whole idea of not being alone. And so, being connected a little bit more into the, I have been alone.
You want to be in groups where like, you want your network like this to be where you can come to the table and be like, hey man, I have no freaking clue about this. What do you guys think of this idea? Like that's the value is to spitball and to get ideas percolated with different people that have different experiences, because all of us are marketing our businesses in different ways, and they're all different businesses, right? So no, I don't think that if you're the teacher in the room all the time, that's any fun, and I wouldn't want to be in that situation. But there's virtue in what can be learned from each other a lot. There's like all kinds of stuff I'm doing that might add value to what you're doing, and I know what you're doing because I tried to do it. I actually when Russ and I were cranking on our business, on the business of cyber side, the only reason I stopped putting focus on that is because I have my money invested heavily into Measured Risk, which is a software company, and it's in a competitive space. But the truth is that business right there, the business of cyber, we've got a full course, a full marketing, and it was generating a day. Okay, get this, a day. We were getting probably 10, maybe 10 or more some days, calls about the course, and that would fill out people would fill out an application, calls about the course, and have a 30 to 40 to 50 minute conversation with that prospect. And the phone was ringing off the hook for months. And that was happening when I was working with Russ. Yes. Boom. It got so much I had to have my wife take the calls because I was running Measured Risk.
God, to have that problem would be phenomenal. To have those, I mean, and because as soon as I get on the phone with them, I know I can really support them. I do have this other aspect where it's like, I really do want to provide access, and I want to make sure that box is checked, meaning that I don't want them to have no access to mental grit, right? I want them to make sure that they feel supported in some way, but not trading time for money. So giving them assets and snippets of workshops and even access to workshops that I'll do on a monthly basis for the parents and the athletes, like what have you. And I think would satisfy it, which would be at the standard non-pay level or at a subscription level that's very, very low, what have you. And then having my premium offerings and my premium courses and what have you. And I think there is a way to do it and to be able to have now. So it goes back to having the last problem I've had. And that is, if you build it, they will come. Well, fuck that idea, because if you build it, that's not true.
It's not true.
And that's why that's the belief I ran on for 5 years. It's like, if you build it, they will come. Well, I built everything and nobody came.
I had that same belief, and I actually say the same thing all the time, Nate, you're not alone. And my wife actually just said it the other day. She's like, she was laying in bed. She's like, if they build it, they will come. Oh, that's bullshit. I don't know whoever came up with that. That's what she said. And the truth is, it is so true. I've got software right now in my possession, which is a national security asset. Literally, like the NSA PhDs of cybersecurity and algorithmic warfare reached out to me recently, and I'm going on a panel across the DoD and IC. Now listen to this. Nobody really knows I have it. Will they come? It depends. Only intelligence community might come. But what about the masses? I could save big corporations a ton of risk and money. So to your point, if you build it, they won't come. No, you got to bring them. The more transactable you can get it, and you can actually get it to a point where it's metricable. Like I literally knew that this day I was going to get this amount of calls between this period of time and this period of time. I also knew the profile, like the demographic aspects, they started getting pretty granular. And so Russ knows how to do all that. That's what we did together. So basically, like he's the expert, no doubt, on being able to tighten all that. I will give consideration to, if I'm thinking like what you've got, because you are the SME, and you do, dude, I would tell you right now, you've got a heck of a business opportunity with what you're doing, because I know how much. Do you know what the parent? I think Holly was telling me how much parents spend in their children in the sports industry in the last 2 years. It was insane,
stupid amounts of money.
Was like, look at all the travel teams, how much that costs and stuff. It's not just money, it's like time. So man, like, and I can see what you do is becoming viral. There was a company,
especially at the MLB, right? The NFL, MLB, like all of the professional level is like jumping on board sports psychology. The Olympic level, like, but that's the problem, is that's the only way to access. That's where athletes are getting sports psychology, is after the development of skills.
Right, exactly.
College, and when they have the problems, they don't have this. It goes into why.
Dude, the influencer side would be interesting too. Like we could probably figure out through our networks a couple different people to give you a good influence, like a blurbs on your website or something like that.
Interesting.
I mean, I'm telling you, like DJ's background is he's heavily psychology. He worked with me. He told me that working with me, even though I put him in the company, he actually worked with me on the psychology side of winning. That's what we, what we did for 2 years. And I can tell you that the way he looks at the world is way different than a lot of people look at the world. And knowing like basically guys like him he wrote a book on it. It's called what is it called? DJ Dozier, Decide to Dominate. And in this book, it's fascinating. Decide to Dominate, but it's about basically what we're talking about. And he actually wants to do some kind of he wants to do a TV show or something about it. But there's other people that I'm involved with in this that are, to your point, that are like advanced human performance people. I think with what you're doing, man, like I've never heard of anybody actually taking on this niche. Bingo. It's freaking brilliant.
I haven't either. Even in the sports psychology space, there's people who say like it's important, but they can't figure out a way to make money off it. So they just leave it by the wayside. The traditional model of consulting in sports psychology is ancient. It's just ancient.
Yeah.
And so it's just like the ones who are doing it right are doing it for corporations and for high-end NFL, MLB, right, contracts, which great, but I still don't think that's where they need it. I still think that the youth is where you train them because they're so plastic.
Like think of systems design.
And there's more kids there too. There's more athletes in the youth space by millions.
I honestly think what would be really interesting is do a market study on what the total addressable market is for your offering to let's just say the United States. My opinion is that it's probably enormous, like literally. So then it's just distribution and content. It's literally distribution and content, brother. Like distribution meaning getting it out there, and then content, the robustness of your program and your platform and what you teach and so on and so forth, and the uniqueness of how you package, and do you take people through an 8-week cycle, like what's involved in that, what's the density, all the pieces of that. And then the distribution is how do you get 1 out of 10 people to buy it that are potential prospective buyers across the United States, that kind of thing.
Because there is a piece behind all of this that is less about training athletes and more about making sure that other sports psychology consultants that come out of training in their master's level programs who are focused on applied work have a job.
Oh yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
They are 80% of graduates don't have a job and fall out of sports psychology training because they can't make money off of it.
I was thinking
80%.
When you first started talking, I started thinking, well, you're talking about like you want to be accessible, and my immediate thought was, why don't you just create on the back side of that, an affiliate network or a distribution network where you become a lead generation mechanism for
yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I don't necessarily want to coach the rest of my life. I just want to make sure that I'm fulfilling this need in the market. And yes, I want to give jobs to everybody, right? That's where the scalability of this happens. And now that COVID's happened, it's made everyone go virtual like that. So everyone's used to virtual now. They can do virtual coaching anywhere in the world. Now to create, now I have the mental grit way of saying things, right? The philosophy of kind of what I feel like is most important in performance psychology, which is a part of my brand, right? And I just want to make sure that if I bring in other people that they're speaking the same language, all of that stuff, the lexicon needs to be there. But yes, that is the ultimate goal here. And I have a network of at least 10 right now that if I could fill their schedules, they would be so grateful to me, number one. And number two, I could succeed at this like mission that I have of making.
Look at Legal Shield. Look at a company called Legal Shield or any of these others. They literally, what you do is you sign up for like $50 a month or whatever, and they have a network of lawyers that you then can ask like 10 times a year. You can ask them a question. And like literally, that's a very vanilla example, but my point is they're using affiliates. They're using
and I'll have these people manage a lot of questions that come through the community, right? And let them manage it. And then it goes one step deeper. Then if you have the kids that have mental health problems, of which I don't work with, I have a full network of clinical psychologists that know sports, right? So it's like I can see it. You could see it.
Yeah.
So
let me interject. You guys are on fire, and I love the engagement. You have access to each other, like I said, like through cool platforms.
Tom, let's catch up.
Yeah, man. For sure.
Like engage. I love it. Let's just say this is a common thing that experts fall into, and that is they build before they sell, and they end up building something nobody wants.
Yeah.
And they have all the ideas of all the tech, all the courses, all the products, and we can use that stuff. But when you try to put that in front of you, then crickets.
Yeah.
And so if you look at use the expert as a SaaS, like you're a software as a service, but you're human. If you look at you as the SaaS and say, okay, I'm building my offerings around 3 to 5 perfect clients. And as I build this offering around 3 to 5 perfect clients, after I get that, they're going to pay me a lot of money. It's less access. It's less access, but it's high return.
Yeah.
And I'm able to build something high quality that I can then scale back from and now turn on the ads like Tom did and just let the phones ring. And then that everyone that comes in there, they're like, optimize experience. This works. Customer success is on fire. You don't even have to push it. But if you go build the Mighty Networks is solid. Like this is it. If you go build all that in advance, it's going to be crickets. And so that's why we
build something you can sell for $10 once and then try to sell that 1 million times. Like here's the thing, like to Russ's point there, look up, you're familiar with like MVPs or mean viable product, and then lean startup methodology, right, all that stuff. So to your point, what Russ is describing, I am completely guilty of. I'm a perfectionist. And I am like, I need this damn thing to be like my dream. It's like oh my God, it needs to be like, I need people to be like, holy shit, that thing is wildly different than everything. Well, you know what? That's an expensive endeavor. And then it borders lines on, wait, dude, are you a scientist and like a hobbyist? Are you like find that line for yourself. Is what I had to do. I had to figure out like, okay, at what point here am I just going to be realistic with myself and say,
well, this is the line.
Yeah.
We have reached the line at this point. So I stopped building and I'm just going to start selling and then have the conversations and then use those conversations to supplement, other conversations or other offerings or whatever it might be to make sure that I am creating a valuable asset, even though I do have a general idea what parents are wanting because I have been talking to in the last 7 years. Anyway, great points. I very, very, very much appreciate it.
And use that same energy, bro. Like you've got so much energy and all these ideas that happened the last week.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Like don't diminish it. Like it's amazing. And take that. It's like if you look at like a piece of dynamite, if you just put it out in the open, it just dissipates, but it's still energy. If you put that within like a steel tube, now it's a tank cannon. Boom, that's directed in a direction. And so we're going to take that same energy. We're going to validate what you're doing. We're going to build the perfect offering around your perfect clients. And then it's just out the cannon. Boom.
Love it.
So we got to wrap up.
One other thing I want to throw in, think about market adjacencies, Nate, where another angle here is what is that parent buying that you could attach to as well? In other words, so one thing I've learned in my business career is it's easier that when you're, let's say, the only way I can explain it to you is software. When you're selling software as a software company, a new software company, you hire all these salespeople and they go out and do what's called turning over rocks. They're knocking on doors of customers trying to get their interest. Each one of those is a manual, heavy lift, and it's expensive process. You know what's easier to do? Go find something that customer is already buying that is adjacent, and then attach to that from a partner strategy perspective as well. There's got to be a ton of those, dude.
I think you're right. And I think that's where the Game on Live studio or that live stuff, right? Like they're purchasing the ability to watch their kid, right? And then having some of these opportunities. And these are like, Yeah. Anyway, we could go 4 days. Tom, we'll be getting in touch, and I'll be letting you know how things go in the next 6 months.
Man, for sure.
Even if you just have like a Calendly link that you can give to Tom, and he gives that to somebody, they book a call with you get on the phone. That's it.
And maybe okay, so I'll get the Calendly built out. That way it's accessible at this point.
Get a calendar. They can book with you. You can get on the phone. They can pay you, and then you can coach them live on Zoom. And this is how we do it. Just like I've done with you. This is how we do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how you build out the perfect program. Is you do it live.
Yep.
And have your customers are going to be telling you what to build along the way, which is fantastic.
Oh, too. Yeah. I agree. Okay, Tom, thank you. Thank you again for your time, man. Have a great day.
Tom, I'm going to wrap up with Nate. Love you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Love you too, man. See you guys. Peace.